Hey everybody, and welcome back to Lunacy. How? This is part 2 of my interview with Jade Michael on Neuro-Sovereignty. If you haven't listened to part 1, go back and check it out. Here is the conclusion of our interview. Really hope you enjoy. Much love.
Neuro-Sovereignty itself is a plant medicine free process. I kind of call it the manual recoding matrix because it's a process that teaches you how to use your frontal lobe, how to use your masculine I mind to rewire your neural circuitry and your nervous system.
Hmm. Okay. All right,
Mhm.
great. Well, that sounds good. How do we do that?
So, like my story, it really starts with strengthening the masculine because, right, the seventh hermetic principle again is the principle of gender. And so everything that we do is in a process of rebalancing the masculine and the feminine aspects within ourselves. The masculine mind is the I mind, it's the conscious mind, it's the frontal lobe. It says, I will do this, I will do that, I like this, I don't like that. It's the seat of judgment and planning. And
Mhm.
then the subconscious mind is the feminine because the feminine is the infinite void of creation. She is the womb, and that's what the subconscious is brilliant at is
Mhm.
the subconscious mind can really create anything, imagine anything, generate all of these ideas and inspiration. But in order to create, the feminine needs to receive the direction, receive the blueprint from the masculine mind that says, I will create this. And that's what the principle of mental gender is all about, is that our feminine is always open, she's always receptive, and she just waits for the blueprint, the seed of the masculine to be planted. It's like the masculine is the gardener and the feminine is the garden.
Hmm.
But because of the current cultural paradigm that we live in, the masculine I mind of a lot of people is very distractible. It's very distractible. Our attentional control has been severely diminished. Like if we're scrolling on our phone and we're hitting reset, reset, reset on our attentional control network every time a new video comes up, that's really dangerous. We're giving away our most valuable currency. In the Hermetic worldview, we live in the mind of the all. And the strength of mind is based on its attentional control, its capacity for sustained attention.
Hmm.
And because of media and social media, and also having the very similar biology to our ancestors that lived before the technological age and driving cars and having emails and all of the different things that it takes to just be a human in the modern world. Like there's a huge tax on our attentional control system already. We're
Right.
already at a huge deficit, right? Like the amount of people that are diagnosed with ADD, attentional deficit disorder, is through the
Hmm.
roof.
Yeah.
It's through the roof. And that's a whole different conversation about how many young boys are misdiagnosed with that we don't need to we don't need to get into. But it's actually not a deficit of attention. It's misnamed. It's an attentional control deficit disorder
Hmm.
because we don't teach people how to train their attention. And it's a lot easier to create a system in which people are controllable
Yes.
if they are at an attention deficit.
Yeah.
And on top of that, our awareness is directed in very specific directions
Mhm.
to especially the programming of social media, like wanting to have the hottest body and the fastest car and the nicest home. And these are the things that when you attain them, these will make you happy.
Right.
And it creates this copycat culture where I see this girl post this video and I think it's really cute. So I'm going to make the same video and I'm going to post it. And then this guy's going to see this video and be like, that's a cool video. I'm going to remake this video. And it's this ingenious system where the creators and the consumers are one and the same, walking in a circle, all looking at each other instead of looking up and realizing, oh, there's a whole other world
Hmm.
up there. And that's really what the matrix is we're stuck in a matrix. We're stuck in a dimensional space and we pay to be there with our awareness and our attention.
Yeah.
And so the first step of neuro-sovereignty is recognizing that the masculine I mind is all about awareness and attention. And we have largely forfeited our awareness and attention to be part of this current cultural paradigm that effectively takes us very far away from our authentic selves because it
Hmm.
programs with all of these things that if we get these, we'll be happy. But have we
Yes.
ever actually taken a moment to sit down and ask ourselves, is that actually want for my what I want for my life?
Hmm.
Because it takes a certain level of attentional control to be able to sit down and answer that question, which
Yeah.
has also been taken away.
Yeah, it's fascinating. It just feeds into the if then mentality of happiness. If I have this,
Hmm.
then I'll be able to be happy. And if then one day, someday I'm gonna, have hope. Jim Carrey has
Hmm.
a great talk about that where he talks about how, hope is for beggars. And like
Hmm.
even if you get all that you want, all the fame, all the fortune, which obviously he's Jim Carrey. That's not really what makes you happy. That's not really what makes you fully embrace your life and really love your life. What makes you love your life is your relationships and investing in the people around you and investing in your own heart and who you truly are. And
Yeah.
it's interesting because I think we so often we confuse um, it almost seems like, well, this is how we've evolved. We've evolved to have this really short attention span. And and then that's the way that it goes. And we're just going to keep going faster and faster and faster and faster. But really, what you're pointing to is that we are eroding our greatest resource, which is our attention, our ability to stay focused and
Hmm.
create. And we're just constantly eroding that through new and different things to make us feel better and to give us that little hit of serotonin, like we've figure that out so that we just sit there and keep clicking. The image that comes to mind is I was in Reno snowboarding at this resort called Heavenly up here in Tahoe, which is a beautiful resort. And my buddy wanted to play pool. And so we walked into this casino. I've never been so struck at how zombified people are in this casino, just like sitting in front of the screen going ding, 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 ding,
Mm.
ding, 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 watching their money go away and just waiting for the lights to light up and like glued to the screen. And then there's some guy walking through, going cocktails, cocktails, like totally bleary eyed, like on complete
Mhm.
automatic. It was just like it was one of those moments where it's like hell is revealed to you, right in front of you.
100%. That's the
And
same energy too when you walk into a teenager's room and they've been scrolling on their phone for 2 hours.
yeah, and it really is. And it's like what's sad about it is, here we are doing a podcast. People are either listening to it on their phone. Hopefully they're going for a hike while they're listening to this. That's my encouragement. Or they're watching it, or they're watching clips on their phone because I have to promote it. So how do I promote it? Well, I
Mhm.
promote it on Instagram, which is like that's been a huge battle for me. It's like now what I'm realizing is like, well, that's the way that you share and that's the way that you reach people and spread your message and try to be helpful and be of service. And yet
Mhm.
I'm feeding into the existing problem because then people are watching, they're watching my like I can't escape it. And I mean, ultimately my message is like get off the phone, leave the phone at home, go jump in the river, all right, and contemplate how water works. You know what I mean? For 72 hours. See how you go. Uh but it's really fascinating because I like what you're pointing to is us like really stopping and honoring what the feminine spirit really is and the
Mhm.
feminine spirit within each of us.
Mhm.
And so you're pointing to a lot of that with so much of that with your work and also there are aspects of the true masculine that we consider to be feminine, like forgiveness and like acceptance
Patience
and patience. Yeah.
and
And
listening.
listening and not being
Mhm.
judgmental of
Yep.
everything. Like recognizing, what's so fascinating to me, I bring this up a lot, is like, we talk about sin. You mentioned your very interesting, bizarre Christian related delusions that you grew up with, which is wow.
Yeah.
We could talk for a week about that. So
Yeah, for
curious.
sure.
But the original sin really refers to archery, right? I mean, it's to sin in the original, Latin root word means to miss the bullseye. So all sin, and even in the Bible, when sin is mentioned, it's usually mentioned in that context of like,
Mm,
you have to sin in order to like figure out where you're going. You're gonna go the wrong way. We're all walking around blind here. There's no possible way
mhm,
that you could hit the bullseye if you didn't miss the bullseye a bunch. So you know where to aim and what to do next and how to, you know what I mean? The mechanics of actual archery have to
mhm.
be learned before you're gonna hit the bullseye. So
100%.
like in even within, and you can consider for sure that a very masculine principle, right? Doing archery and hunting, etc. um but really it's about allowing the fact that you're embracing the suck, so to speak, or like just allowing the fact that this is an evolutionary process and that we have to like not be so harsh with ourselves all the time if we're really going to succeed, and nurture the fact that we are learning and like trust in the process and have faith rather than just expect immediate results right now. It's got to be perfect. um
Exactly.
uh
Exactly. And that's the true essence of a lot of the hermetic path is integrated duality, which is
mhm,
your ability to embrace the suffering. That when the shadow comes knocking, instead of slamming the door or feeling afraid, it's opening the door and having this mindset of, oh, hi, teacher. What are you here to show me? What are you here to teach me? And
mhm,
that's really the masculine opening the door to a unintegrated or fearful aspect of the subconscious,
mhm,
listening to that knocking of this more feminine aspect as she comes to the door, being like, hey, this isn't going well. I'm not feeling safe. And him opening that door and saying, let me grab you a blanket. Let me make you some tea. Like
mm,
you're a teacher, you're revered here, you have a lesson. And I believe that's why we're here as humans. We came here in a lot of ways to
yes.
forget. And we talk about the work as getting there, becoming this thing when really it's much more of remembering, a
Mhm,
remembering of our true nature, of our
yes.
divinity, of our divine mission, why we're here. But we're meant to go through the process, through the hero's journey. That's what it means to be human. And so, if we're here to remember, of course, we had to come forget first. And
Yeah.
in order to forget, there has to be delusion and separation and shadow and things to overcome.
Mhm,
And the hermetic mindset is knowing that this is part of the journey, this is part of the path. There's a quote in the Kabbalion that says, keep your mind ever on the star, but keep your gaze at your feet, lest you fall into the mire by reason of your upward gaze. And it's the divine paradox that we are fully human and fully divine. So keep your
mhm,
mind on the star, the knowing of your infinite divine nature. That's also the masculine. The masculine is the direction, he's goal oriented.
mhm.
But
So
keep your
watch where
mind
you're
on
going.
your feet. Yeah, that's the feminine. That's the process. That's the body. That's the day-to-day living. That's the chopping the wood and carrying the water,
Mhm,
right? This process is incredibly important because it's through learning the lessons and coming into the great remembrance that this process brings that realigns us with that star,
mhm,
right? But if we just have our head in the clouds all the time, then we're going to fall into the mire because we're not tending to the feminine aspects. And that's really what has happened to us culturally and within ourselves as individuals, is that we haven't been listening to
No.
the feminine. We've gone very astray, very wayward because we've had this hyper masculine goal oriented orientation
Yes.
that doesn't care about what happens in the process as long as the goal is achieved. And
Empire.
this has created this massive imbalance outside of ourselves and within us as well. And when the masculine is so focused on achieving all of these goals, all of these accolades outside of ourselves, and we already have a finite amount of attentional resources,
Hmm.
well, then we're doing ourselves a huge disservice because we are focused on the world outside instead of turning inward and looking at our bad habits, our self-limiting beliefs, our unintegrated trauma, our anxious or avoidant attachment style. All of these things that are signals of dysregulation.
Hmm.
There's signals that at some point in time there was a trauma or a very emotional experience or a cultural paradigm that became integrated that hasn't been reconciled. And these programs are running on the inside, which is causing all of this dysregulation.
Hmm.
And instead of being focused so much on the outside world, what if we turn inward? We turn that
Yeah.
attentional control inward and we go to the bottom to find the core belief, find the base program that
Hmm.
is running so that we can pull that out and insert a new belief system,
Yeah. That's
right?
great.
And that's effectively what neuro-sovereignty teaches people to do in a step-by-step, very easy to use process. And that's what the reclamation of the masculine requires right now. We must
Yeah.
heal the masculine within ourselves
Hmm.
so that this can then be reflected in the world outside of ourselves too. But we
Yeah.
need to use the miracle of the masculine mind, which has created so many things in the external world, and use that to recreate our internal mindset architecture so
Yeah.
that our mind actually becomes a home that is a safe space for both our masculine and our feminine to live in.
Yeah. I think that's great. And I love that you brought it back to the men are better than women at the end there, with the masculine.
Yeah, yeah, you
Then we got to have
gotta
the
always
masculine
wrap
mind.
it back
Let's
together.
just go back with the men are better than women. All right. In the end. No, that's right. Like that we have to heal the way that our masculine mind works, that our goal oriented, that we've inherited this, empire driven structure that's constantly looking to conquer the planet, conquer people, conquer women, make money, whatever, just keep going, provide for the family, from a scarcity mentality, from a fear-based mentality. So many peoples have been conquered and overcome from, not just like the Native Americans, but also the Celtic people, where my people come from, that were
Me
wandering around,
too.
the hermits, right? It's
Yep.
like, we think, oh, well, it's just all white people. No, no, no. It's an empire driven mentality in
Mhm.
all societies that, has ultimately failed. And then we've inherited that. So that's what we think we need to do. Well, now the world has sort of been conquered, if you will, or we've explored pretty much everywhere that you could go, seems like. Um, I don't know. Maybe there's somewhere else. You know what I mean? The mole people down underneath. All right. What's going on? The moles. See, they finally
The
came up. The
moles.
mole
There they
people. Don't
came. There
forget.
they
There they
are.
are. There's an
Yeah.
article by Woodrow Wilson about doing some sort of commerce with the mole people. All right. I heard about it. That's a good conspiracy right there. And I bet they're just like, fuck you guys. Okay.
Leave
We
us
don't do
alone.
anything.
Like, we
Anyway, I
don't
don't know
want
about the
your
mole people.
unbalanced bullshit. Could you
Right.
not?
Yeah. Yeah. Why don't you go get regulated? Okay. Come back. And then
Seriously.
maybe we'll make you a quilt. Uh, no, but really, there's, we've inherited this conqueror mentality, and of everything, and that we have to get that it's never what we need is never right here in front of us. It's always out there,
Mhm.
and we have to go
Mhm.
look for it. And so like the biggest treasure is like within, I mean, like I part of me hates saying it because I'm just like, oh my God, people are just gonna be like, what is he talking about? Really, dude? Uh, but really the treasure really is within. And this
Mhm.
idea that it is without is just sick.
It's a
It's
reflection of placing God outside of ourselves,
yeah,
that we're always seeking this divinity
yeah.
outside of ourselves. And in the modern world, this divinity is really materialism. It's
Hmm.
land, it's
Yeah.
oil,
Money.
it's money. That's
Yeah.
because
The
that's where
God we
we've
trust.
in the
Yeah.
exactly.
Even
It's
on the
what,
dollar bills, it says.
yeah, right?
That a- and even though like people are skeptical and I can hear like my own voice going, whatever, dude, uh, I tell you what, try believing that everything that you seek is within you. Try really listening to that voice. Really go for it. Try it on for a week and see how much happier you are in your life. Like,
Mm,
really, you can be skeptical. You can say this is all a bunch of nonsense or whatever. Try it on. Let's see if your quality of life improves for you by looking to yourself for the answers and not looking out, by putting the
mm,
phone down.
mm,
Because that's really the proof. Like, by asking these questions, by looking in this way, do I feel more centered and happy in my life? And the answer for me is absolutely yes. Obviously,
mhm,
it is for you, and you literally got over a disease that plagues millions of people without the use of drugs, but by meditating and looking inward. Uh,
mhm,
so I think like that's one thing. The answers are within if we start looking within, if we start treating ourselves with more forgiveness, acceptance, and respect, if we start working to balance the masculine with the feminine, even though the feminine is scary, if we start embracing the pain, there was a lot of that message in what you're talking about, like really looking at our pain as lessons and not trying to avoid it, because guess what? It's just going to get worse. The
mhm.
more you avoid it, it's just going to come back even worse. And
Gonna
then
get
what?
louder and louder until it's such a physical manifestation of chronic disease that you don't have a choice
Right.
but to look at it.
Exactly. Or you've like just murdered all the relationships in your life and now
Hmm.
you don't have a family, which happens all the time with alcoholism, etc. Which by the way, alcohol, not the answer. Sorry, alcohol. Anyway, and then the other thing that I think is really fascinating that you point to, which I believe is, we don't like to think this way, but we are programmed. We're just a bunch of robots. I'm sorry.
Hmm.
I wish it wasn't so. I wish we didn't live in a society full of zombies and that the
Hmm.
zombification has gotten so much more real. Aside from the casinos, literally a couple of years ago, I was driving. This guy's walking across the street looking at his phone. The guy next to me is really old. He's like kind of below the steering wheel. He's gonna murder this guy, not intentionally, but he's gonna run this guy over. The guy's not seeing anything because he's just looking at his phone. I start honking my horn. That guy looks up, sees the cars coming. The older guy next to me slows down. Like I saved this guy's life, and he looks at me like I'm an asshole, because he's so zombified in his phone. Like he
Hmm.
would have. I really wish I would have like pulled over and confronted him and talked to him about it, but I didn't. But the point is, like we are so zombified, we are so programmed, as you're pointing to, whether we
Hmm.
realize it or not. We do have these beliefs that we've inherited, and they don't even necessarily come from society. They can come from epigenetics. They can be
Hmm.
inherited that way. I'm experiencing my grand great grandmother's trauma that had her put my grandfather in the closet when he was a child. Like who knows, right? That's all within me, that we are, full of all of these programs that are not working for us. And what
100%.
there is to do now is really do the work of like stop, take a breath, listen, relax,
Hmm.
allow yourself to feel the pain, let
Yeah.
it be, and then recreate, reprogram.
And that's exactly the miracle of the masculine mind, the I mind, is
Yeah.
its capacity to do that.
Hmm.
If we turn this attention and this awareness inward to truly process and figure out which programs serve us, which programs do not serve us, we have the ability to turn down the volume of the programs that don't serve us anymore and install belief systems and programs that are actually in service to us.
Yeah.
And yes, we are so programmable because the principle of gender is all about the idea that the masculine is penetrative. The masculine plants its will, it plants its seed. The I mind says, I will create this. And the feminine, the me, receives that and creates it. The masculine is the creative director, the feminine is the creation herself.
Hmm.
And because the I mind in so many people is so lazy and weak and distractible, but the feminine is always open and receptive. That if your I mind is not programming yourself, if your I mind is not planting seeds into your feminine, then the eyes of other people and other corporations are doing exactly that. That
Yeah.
is exactly what is happening.
That's right. Yeah, and we're just unfortunate chumps in the process. Oh, this is what the other thing that I was going to say is and that's sad. Like I don't want to say that, but that's the truth. I don't want to
No,
be
that's
the
the
bearer of
truth.
bad news. That's the truth. And by the way, the other thing is like we earlier we talked about meditation and how challenging it is. And that's true. It is challenging when you first start meditating. But I can tell you, and I'm sure you could say the same thing, I meditate every day and I love it. Every time I
Hmm.
love it. Even though there's some times where I'm like, okay, well, I got to do this. I don't, the same challenges that I faced long ago are not there because I'm able to get into the alpha state much more readily because of the years of
Hmm.
experience. Like it is not training your mind that way. It's challenging at first because you're confronting the froth of all the things that are going on with you right now and you're allowing that to settle. And that can be very jarring because holy shit, you didn't even know how crazy your mind is until you stopped and listened. But
Uh-huh.
every time you meditate, that you're easing that muscle, you're letting go, you're releasing even more and more and more until you get to a point where you really are, as you say, neuro-sovereign, right?
Yeah, that's exactly it. Of course, the first time you walk into the garage after deciding to clean it after 20 years of being a hoarder, you're gonna walk
Right.
into the garage and be like, oh man, really? Oh. That's going to
Yeah.
be a horribly painful process.
Hmm.
But each day you go in and you clear and clean out one box, and then you
Hmm.
clear and clean out another box.
Yeah.
And then in a year, you walk into that garage and it's far more organized.
Hmm.
And then once it's more organized, you begin to realize there's another decluttering that I can do here. And then you kind
Hmm.
of go through things again. And that's how it works. Once we get the big, heavy boxes out of the way, then we can
Hmm.
begin to focus on the more subtle things, the
Yeah.
more nuanced things. And once we get into the subtle, once we get into the more nuanced and start regulating ourselves in that more subtle energy realm, that's where the real peace comes from.
Yeah. That's right. That's right. Yeah, that's great. And we stop trying to escape as much and we really start getting on what it is that our program is or what it is that we consider to be our divine mission or what it is that we consider to be like our greatest gifts. And we really start to also appreciate life more, which I think
Mhm.
that's also a good practice is just being grateful,
Oh, yeah.
entering into
Gratitude is
gratitude.
huge. Gratitude is one of the quickest ways we know scientifically that brings us into a state of heart-mind coherence.
Hmm.
And heart-mind coherence is a physiological state we can measure through heart rate variability that tells us that essentially our mind and our heart, our body are in sync.
Yeah.
They're at peace. They're in this state of sovereign communication, not miscommunication, right? They're actually plugged into one another.
Hmm.
And gratitude and appreciation is one of the fastest ways to bring yourself into a state of heart-mind coherence.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great. Yeah. I totally agree. And it works. I mean, I agree with it because it works.
Yep, same.
Like, just try it. It's not, yeah, it totally works.
Mhm.
If whether it's grace when that you say when you have a meal, whether it's when you wake up, you start looking around, being thankful for things, whether it's like a thing that you do with your partner, where it's like you really appreciate even dumb things that are not that you wouldn't normally appreciate,
Mhm.
um, even if it's funny, like it can get you into that space, that zone of appreciation.
Mhm.
I do want to also talk about this idea of radical responsibility. I'm a musician also, and I'm about to release a song in about a month called Blame that's really sort of about radical responsibility. So I'm tempted to show it to you, and then we can sort of talk about that a little bit so I can sort of promote my song. Would that be okay? Is
Cool. Yeah,
that
that's so
okay?
cool. Let's do it.
Quick post production interlude here. This song comes out April 5th. And so I'm just going to share about the first minute of the song. If you're watching, you will see the first minute of the video. When it does come out, please give it some love. I put a lot of heart into this song, and I'm really proud of both the song and the video. Here is Blame.
Tired of people walking round with a chip on the shoulder, turning the world upside down just to say that they told you. Anger and grief replacing the need for authentic connection. Loving the heart turned black as the thought of a total rejection. When all you do is blame, blame becomes your name. You ought to be ashamed. Underneath, we're all the same.
Wow, that was so good.
Thanks.
Whoa, cool video too.
Thank you. Thank you.
Amazing. Yeah, it was so cool to watch the unfolding of like the this it just brings to mind the amount of dysregulation and trauma that leads up to that point in time,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
To the point in time of the story of the couple, you and who I don't know who the woman is, your wife in the video,
Yeah. My video wife.
your video wife, your music video wife.
Uh-huh.
But it really brings in this pondering of how much trauma and dysregulation is present before we get to that point in time,
Hmm.
right? When we become adults that blame and point fingers and get angry and drown out our problems. Like, how much had to go wrong before it culminates in that point in time?
Yeah, exactly. By the way, Jolene Anderson is the actress that plays my wife, and she's fantastic. This song and the video will come out March 22nd. And the reason that I wanted to share that with you is not only to promote it because I think it's a great song and I'm excited about it, but also because the subject of the song, it's called Blame. When all you do is blame, blame becomes your name. You got to be ashamed. Underneath, we're all the same. It feeds into this idea of radical responsibility that once you realize the red pill of radical responsibility, once you realize, oh my God, I can't blame everybody else for my problems. I am the source and I am the one who's reacting all the time. And I accept that I am that. I am this program waltzing around with emotions. I am the zombie that is waltzing around. And no, wait, I can stop, be patient, and respond.
Mm-hmm.
Once you see that in yourself, then you see it everywhere and everybody else. And then it's hard to watch.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Boy,
hard to
is
watch the rest of the
it.
world, like tired of people walking around with a chip on their shoulder, turning the world upside down just to say that they told you, you know?
Yeah.
Anger and greed replacing the need for authentic connection, love in the heart turned black as the start of a total rejection. Like that is how it
Mhm.
is. That's how I see it, you know? And so the release of this song is challenging for me because I'm not trying to point fingers at people and be like, I'm better than you know, and obviously that's why the video is important because I'm playing the guy who's blaming everybody and then they come together at the end. But my point is like, we just all need to wake up and smell the coffee and look at the fact that this blame game that we're playing, that we've been playing for centuries and longer, way longer than that, but particularly
Mhm.
these days, of just blaming everybody else for our own problems gets us nowhere. There's no power in that. The only power is in taking full responsibility for myself and my life and everything that occurs in my life and all the stories that I create and write about myself and about everybody else. That's where the only power is. And in some of your posts, you talk about the power of radical responsibility. If you could talk a little bit about that, as well as like just how it is that we notice our reactions, and then we can use the emotion that comes out of our reactions to inform how we're going to respond.
Yeah, that's absolutely a key piece. And I'll start with the first part of the question of looking more into radical responsibility. And honestly, you nailed it. You nailed it. And the way that I typically start explaining radical responsibility is with the concept of blame,
Hmm.
because sometimes people wrong us. Sometimes we wrong ourselves. Sometimes the situation feels really unfair. And as humans, we really want justice. We want resolution. And sometimes we get it, and sometimes we don't. And if I am pointing fingers outside of myself and blaming something outside of myself, then chances are I am waiting for that thing outside of myself to come and fix the problem.
Hmm.
And that's why victim consciousness is so tricky,
Hmm.
because sometimes we can feel very entitled to play the victim
Yeah.
because she said this or he did that, or my mom treated me this way when I was little, and that's why I'm like this.
Hmm.
Right? And
Yeah.
so it can keep us in the state of being dysregulated and disempowered. And that's truly one of the fundamental aspects of hermetic wisdom is a calling forward, calling you forward to tell you that you can exist down here in the realm of victim consciousness, where you are a byproduct of your moods and your relationships. And when things are going really well, you feel great. When things are not going so well, you feel terrible because you're being reactive.
Hmm.
Essentially, victim consciousness is the state of being reactive, where you allow things outside of yourself to determine your inner architecture, your inner well-being. And that's choice one. Or there's a second choice where we rise above victim consciousness and come into the seat of creator consciousness. We tap into the higher conscious realms and we choose to be an active co-creator of our story, really activating the I mind, the frontal lobe, to put into affect changes and circumstances internally and externally that we want. But in order to do that, we need to take radical responsibility for
Hmm.
the things that stand in the way of that. So if that's your anxious attachment style or addictive behaviors or obsessive compulsive disorder or familial trauma, we have to take radical responsibility for what it means to be the cycle breaker.
Yes.
And that means I have to stop pointing my finger at everybody else and look inside and say, okay, you know what? This trauma was not my fault. Sometimes it is, sometimes we play ourselves, but oftentimes this trauma is not my fault, but healing it is my responsibility if I
Hmm.
don't wish to pass it on.
Right.
And that's
Or
the
spread it to other
essence.
people. Yeah, pass it on
Exactly.
to your children or to your friends and family and society,
Yeah,
etc. Yeah,
that's
that's great.
exactly what it is.
There's something about this just came to me. I hadn't really thought about it this way, but like I'm an artist by God. And one of the things I do is acting, and I've done a lot of theater and taught theater, etc. So like, you get the script, right? And we're all getting the script. And it's how I choose to play the part. Like we're all getting this information, we're all getting these programs. Well, how do I play the part? And recognizing that I am playing this part, that I am just reacting to this story from my ego perspective, that doesn't want to be responsible and wants to point the finger. And then there's a place where I can stop and say, but wait, I don't have to do the script that I'm being given. I can actually rise to the level of being the writer of the script. I can
Mm-hmm.
actually become the writer of my own script and recognize that even as it stands, I am always writing my own script anyway. And so then the more I tap into that, the more that I see that I'm the one who's telling this story. And either I'm telling it as like, oh, I'm a total victim because this, and this happened. My mother spanked me and my dad was a asshole and never appreciated what I did, or like whatever my story is, right? That's not my story. But and this terrible thing happened and that terrible thing happened, and look at the lot that I've been dealt in this life, and etc. I can come from that space, or I can stop and say, what did all of those things have to teach me? And who am
Mm-hmm.
I now, in recognition that like I have the opportunity to respond instead of just be a reactionary zombie, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So it's like I think there's something really powerful in the notion of like recognizing that we are all right. We are all actors in this drama, and that if we choose, we can become writers of our own story.
Mm-hmm.
And in choose making that choice, you're also recognizing that I've been writing it all along. You've been writing it all along. Each of us is writing our own story all the time.
Mm-hmm. We are actively co-creating our reality 100% of the time. And so the invitation is to become a conscious co-creator instead of an unconscious co-creator, so that we
Yeah.
can use our power of co-creation to write the story of our lives that we actually want to be living for
Yeah.
ourselves. And a big piece of that is, like I said, having to work through the dysregulation and the programs that are running that are not in service to us.
Hmm.
There's a process of spring cleaning that we
Yes.
need to go through so that our house is actually hospitable, right?
The hoarder garage, such a
The
great
hoarder
analogy.
garage
You walk in there
needs
and you're
to
like,
be
oh my
cleaned
God, the
out.
dead rats in the corner are just fucking disgusting.
Yeah,
Yeah.
gross.
That's great.
Hmm.
That's great. And I think, something that comes along with all of that is like just a greater level of appreciation and love for this life and the people that are in it. I saw
Hmm.
this. My wife was showing me this guy was skiing at Mount Baker up in Washington, and he ran over this snowboard and he stopped and he was like, what the hell is that? Super deep powder. And there was a snowboarder that was head first down in the snow. Like, no chance this guy's getting out. But it just so happened that this other skier skied over his board. And so he dug him out. He pulls out this shovel because he's all prepared and digs this snowboarder out and saves this guy's life, who would have for sure died, probably not pretty soon.
Wow.
Um, and and they interviewed them afterwards, and he was just like, yeah, it's really interesting. Like, now I'm telling everybody that I know, that I love people. I'm letting go of grudges and resentments that I've had from the past. Like, I'm really recognizing how valuable this life is, because I would have died there. And it's interesting, like, okay, it can take something like that, this freak accident, where this, I mean, that's, to me, that's like, I, I mean, if you don't believe in God, if you don't believe in God, snowboard a guy, you better start. All right. Because that was definitely an act of God, and angels and whatever, however you want to see it, spirits,
Hmm.
people helping me. But like, you could have this set up, this extraordinary incident where you almost died and then got saved by an actual person, and then realize, oh my God, I've been holding grudges for all these people and all these resentments. Or you could just stop and like look within and take the time to listen to your own stories and then take the time to rewrite those stories.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's exactly it. That's exactly the invitation. And just closing out with the second part of the question you asked about being aware of our reaction. Our reaction tells us so much about our state of being, because what often happens is our shadow comes up and then we respond to it with fear or shame or resistance, and we try to push it away.
Yeah.
And if we're coming in with judgment or shame or guilt, that's the condemning masculine voice.
Yes.
That's a condemning masculine voice. If we're coming in with resistance, then it's this like weak masculine that's like, nope, oh, I'm gonna avoid it. Nope, I'm not gonna take responsibility for that. I'm just gonna pretend like it's not a problem,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so if we're resisting or we're shaming, we're guilting, we're judging, then we realize we're actually in a state of shadow masculine.
Hmm.
And the invitation in that moment is to enter a space of non-judgment and to call on the texture of radical responsibility that says, oh, even if this is crunchy and uncomfortable, it is my responsibility to reconcile this. I'm being called forward in this rite of passage, in this alchemical process, this stage of mental transmutation to really look at this and hold it and understand what it's here to teach me.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing I'll really leave on is the power of grace. The
Yeah.
power of grace is so profound
Mm-hmm.
because grace, I was in a call with one of my incredible clients and she called it the magic e-gracer.
Huh.
And it totally is the magic e-gracer because when we call on the energy of grace, grace is an energy that comes in through involution. So when we reach up for grace, it comes in from the divine realms and meets us.
Mm-hmm.
Grace wants to help us. Grace is the resonant texture of Christ's consciousness. It's the resonant texture of the higher conscious realm. And grace is the magic of gracer that comes in and softens all of the edges and helps us find grace for ourselves. Grace is forgiveness and compassion and understanding and presence.
Mm-hmm.
And so if we can have the shadow come up and we don't react to it, we don't judge it, so we hold it in the space of non-attachment. We put on the hat of radical responsibility that says, I am here to alchemize this process because this is a rite of passage I get to go through and
Hmm.
come out stronger on the other side. And I'm going to do it through the energy of grace.
Beautiful. I
Then
get to go through. Yeah.
that's like the
Boom, boom.
recipe.
There's the recipe. That's beautiful. That's great. Awesome. All right, great. Well, thank you so much, Jade. Oh, this is something I ask all my guests, almost all my guests. I forgot to ask my last guest. But I'm going to ask you because I didn't forget. Uh, Jade Michael, for you, what is sacred and what is insane?
What is sacred and what is insane? Sacred is recognizing the divine in all things as within, so without. And insane is the opposite
Hmm.
of that. It is choosing not to see the sacred that is inherent in all things.
Beautiful. That's great. It's awesome. And so where can people find you?
The website is jademichaelcoaching.com. You
Okay.
can find more there about the next launch of the Neuro-Sovereignty group program. The next cohort is launching in May, which
Uh-huh.
is really
Okay.
exciting.
Great.
And then I'm on Instagram too, which is just at Jade Michael with 3 L's at the end because 1 L was taken and 2 L's was taken, but three
Uh-huh.
L's was up for
It's not
grabs.
taken. Okay, good. Jade Michael, 3 L's. Got it. Boom.
Yes.
And jademichaelcoaching.com. Perfect.
Hmm.
Awesome. All right. Thank you so much for this conversation. I felt like it was I learned a lot. I hopefully other people learned a lot. Maybe you guys all knew this. I don't know, you know. And next time we'll try and interview the mole people, from under
Yeah,
the earth.
yeah. Let's
Go
invite the
talk to
mole
them.
people next time.
Yeah. See if they'll talk to
Yeah.
us. I don't know.
Amazing, brother. Thank you so much for having me on this podcast, and thank you for sharing your new song with me. It's
Yeah.
truly so good. The music video was epic too. So when that drops, I highly recommend everybody listening to this to check out this song. It's gonna be awesome.
April 5th. Blame comes out April 5th. Both our dates were wrong when we recorded the episode. Blame comes out April 5th, and June 4th, 2024 is the launch date for the new Neuro-Sovereignty class. And you can check that out at jademichaelcoaching.com. For a discount, a big one, okay, type in Lunacy when you check out of the Jade Michael site. Okay. Yeah, ears open, eyes peeled. Boom. Watch out. Blame coming at you. All right. Awesome. Thank you so much, Jade. We'll talk soon, and much love, everybody. See you next week.